AATBirds Weekly Report is the Eagle news, notes, and analysis you need.
Go back. He looks, fires for the end zone. Intercepted. The 20, the 10, the 5. Touchdown. Not where? Not where? Midfield. He's going to go. Deshaun Jackson. He steps up his head and falls forward. And he fumbles the football, and the Eagles have it. It's gone. And the Eagles win.
It's all birds, all the time.
And welcome to another edition of AATBirds Weekly Report. I myself is joined by Kendall. Kendall, hey, still the low period, the slowness of the off season because we're still not at training camp yet and everything. So I have a couple fun things in store. So we're going to talk a little bit about some breakout candidates that we have, but I also want to dig into something about basically all-time Eagles and where certain Eagles rank on whether it's an all-time 50 Eagles, all-time 100 Eagles. Have a couple in mind that I want to bring up. And I know you mentioned something before the show about a certain player, but otherwise, how are you doing on this wonderful Wednesday night?
Doing good. Ready for the season to get here. I mean, we're pretty much in the stretch where we're pretty much in the stretch where it's just going to be brutal, and you know, these next couple of weeks are going to be probably the most dead time of the year. So it's just kind of about suffering through it, and then once training camp gets here, we're in full swing. So
yeah, trying to figure out certain things to talk about is a little tough. Next week we do have a guest coming on, so we'll get to that and everything along the lines of that. We also, I do want to mention, we did announce the trip with Philly Sports Trips. I know last episode I had Vince from Philly Sports Trips on, talk a little bit of Fandemonium, kind of get his story. So if you haven't checked that episode out, make sure you go and check it out on all the podcast platforms, YouTube, everything there. So take a listen to that. But we are going to do the two trips were actually announced that we have for a Allentown pickup. So it's you can get picked up in the Lehigh Valley if you live in the Lehigh Valley area and don't want to, you have to travel to Philly to get the bus to whatever game you want to go to. We have the Jets and the Washington trip. The Jets is October 15th and Washington is October 29th. So you can go on phillysportstrips.com. You can log on, and you can deposit. There's a $99 deposit, and then you pay the rest at a later date. But to secure your spot, you put that $99 deposit, and then in the notes to the organizer, just make sure you notate Allentown pickup. So then you are on our bus. So make sure that you get that done because it is going fast. We have a lot more time than we had last year, and a lot of people like that pickup in Allentown because it's a lot closer. So definitely, if you don't want to wait because you may not have a spot. But I just wanted to throw that out, plug that. We will be talking about that on a lot of episodes until the buses get sold out. But no, it should be a fun time. We enjoyed our time last year in Washington, but we got two trips going on this time. But I want to bring up 2023 and look at a couple players who are some breakout candidates who we think is going to show up. We had the biggest breakout of breakouts last year with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts absolutely exceeded expectations. When you look at what he did on the field and how he propelled this team to be the top team in the NFC, win the NFC, go to the Super Bowl, the performance he had in the Super Bowl, he was the ultimate breakout candidate. Not saying that these guys that we're going to talk about are going to be a leap on that type of level. I'm not expecting that. But there are some guys on this team that, can make a little bit of a sizable jump and to be a productive player, especially some of these younger players. But who do you have as we can go back and forth, name a couple
Okay.
things, but who would you be one of your top 3 breakout? If you want to do, we'll each do 3.
Okay. We'll go back and forth
We'll go back
because
and forth. Yeah.
so
So
just so
who
that
would
we're not
be
taking each other's.
one of your breakout candidates?
So my biggest candidate, and I felt this way pretty much since Chauncey Gardner went down last year with an injury. I'm a big believer in Reed Blankenship. Um, Believe it or not, back when he was supposed to come out 2 years ago, I had him in my like late round draft picks, and lo and behold, the next year we signed him to be a free agent. I just like the way he plays the game. He's very smart. He isn't the fastest. He isn't the most athletic, but I think his mental part of his game serves a lot, and I think his ability to. I mean, we saw it firsthand against the Packers. His ability to bait quarterbacks, just pretty much know where receivers are going to be. I think that's a trait that you can't really, learn or just attain. You got to just have it. And if you don't have it, you're in trouble. But I really am excited for Reed. I think he's going to be a very, very productive, high quality starter. I think he's going to be great in the box. I do worry about his ability to close in on tackles, if that makes sense. Like, let's say, for example, Packers last year, he got burnt by Christian Watson. He has some things to work on, but I think he has a lot of strengths. And for being an undrafted free agent, you're not here by coincidence. You know what I mean? You have some skills, and to be undrafted, make the roster, get put in the fire when Chauncey goes down. It speaks to how pretty much reliable or how the team views him, or even with the way they addressed free agency this year. I mean, the offseason is still young, so anything can really happen. But Terrell Edmonds isn't your solidified starter, or Sidney Brown. He's not going to be coming in right away and starting. So, in my opinion, they have a lot of trust in Reed, and I'm excited for what he's going to be bringing this year.
I like that pick. One of the guys that I'm going to bring up here that I think is a breakout candidate, and it's a guy that you kind of expect him to be a good player, but he didn't play last year, and it's Cam Jurgens. And the reason I'm saying a breakout candidate is he's going to most likely be playing out of position. So a position he has never played. So you're going to right guard, and Jason Kelce talked about him a little bit on the radio this morning. Talked about like his athleticism and the type of player, and he's up to 310 now. I know that's kind of the where he wants to play, 310, 315 range. And I know it is a tiny bit undersized for a guard, but he said with the amount of athleticism he has, and even looking at Jurgens, him playing last year when Kelce was recovering from surgery, he checked all those boxes. And yes, he was playing center, but he's a type of player that if he's able to kind of plug right in to what you're missing with Isaac Seumalo and, losing him to Pittsburgh, I think Jurgens can be a definite breakout candidate to not be a weakness on the offensive line, to kind of just keep that offensive line chugging along with the guys they already have there with Kelce and Lane Johnson and Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata, and then just be able to plug Jurgens in there. I think he could definitely be a breakout candidate, and a well worth it breakout candidate when he is a second round draft choice and he's expected to be that type of player. But again, he did not play last year. So he's the type of player I expect to break out and show why he was drafted in the second round.
No, yeah. I mean, I think Jurgens is going to be a phenomenal center. I do worry of the idea of him playing guard just because if he's undersized. And when I say worry, I mean in regard to Tyler Steen. I worry that if he's really showing out during training camp, because Tyler Steen has the ideal build for what you want as a right guard. And when you compare Seumalo to Cam Jurgens, it's kind of a big difference in regards to size. I'm excited for Jurgens this year. If Kelce goes down, I feel very confident that he will be able to replicate what Kelce's doing. But Again, it's very possible for Jurgens to be a phenomenal guard. I just worry that maybe Tyler Steen might impress, but I'll drift over to defense. Another breakout candidate that I am really big on, and I think this guy's gonna pretty much fill in that Javon Hargrave role, and that's Milton Williams. Javon, he wasn't the strongest run stuffer. He last year obviously thrived in the pass rush, and I think that's very similar to what Milton Williams has because I remember multiple times in the Super Bowl, Milton was just getting bodied in the run game. But last year, many times he was getting great rushes um, at the passer, and I think Milton's going to be that prime candidate to fill in for that Javon role. Now, obviously, you have Jalen Carter there, but when you put Jalen Carter next to um, Milton Williams on those obvious passing downs, I mean, you're talking about two really good uh, pass rushing defensive tackles. So um, I forget how many sacks he had last year. Was it Cox had 7?
I
Milton
think
might
he had
have 4, I
11.
think.
Oh, Milton Williams. I think you're talking about Hargrave. Yeah, Milton, I think he had 4, I believe. Just double
Oh,
check.
and then I have a question for you when it comes to defensive tackles. How do you think they're going to be utilizing Fletcher
4, by
Cox
the
this
way.
year? 4? Okay, I thought it was 4. How do you think they're going to be utilizing Fletcher Cox this year? Because last year, I think he was the leader in snaps, and he was getting paid what 15 million. This year, he's getting paid what 5 million less, and um, now they have Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, so on and so forth. Do you think his role is going to be decreased at all, just because of him getting older, him already having so much mileage or whatnot?
So I think they can be kind of limiting the snaps a little bit to kind of keep them fresher, especially when you get towards the end of the season. Um, I think it works better. I think the defense as a whole, when he's not on the field all the time, he doesn't get worn down, he doesn't get worn out, and he's getting older. So if you can keep his snaps down a little bit, kind of along the lines of the way they've used BG the last couple of years.
Right.
I know he was hurt 2 years ago, but like last year, he's very productive in the limited amount of snaps he has and still making plays. I feel you keep Fletch a lot fresher, and he's able to make an impact on the game. And especially if you have guys like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Milton Williams and Kentavious Street, who they sign, and
Good
other
point.
players that you don't have to make his workload a lot. I think he's still going to start. I think he's still going to play a good number of snaps. But if you can hold it where he's not playing 70, 60, 75, 80% of the snaps, he's not getting as worn down, and he's able to be more effective. I think that's where you can kind of see the way the defense being used, him being used on the defense that way.
Yeah, I mean, I fear going to training camp or the end of training camp. I fear that the defense is very deep, maybe too deep at certain positions, like defensive tackle. I don't even know if Kentavious Street is going to make the roster. I honestly,
No.
I kind of see a very small chance of him making it. But they bring him in. He might have been a insurance policy if they didn't get Jalen Carter. But that he's going to be, if they didn't get Jalen Carter, I'm assuming that's what Kentavious was probably going to be. Now, you're assuming that he's going to have somewhat of an important role going into the year. If he can't make the roster, you're assuming that he was going to be what Jalen Carter's going to be. That's a key piece can't let go. And I think the same can be said for the cornerback room. Cornerback room is really deep. A lot of young guys, a lot of talent, a lot of Eli Ricks, Mario Goodrich, Josh Jobe. There's going to be some really good guys who are not going to make the roster, and there's going to be a lot of tough choices to make. And I think defensive tackle and cornerback are going to be one of those two big positions to watch.
Yeah, you're right, and that's key. And you're hoping you're able to, stash some of those guys on the practice squad. Make sure they, hopefully, they're able to, pass through and end up on your practice squad to still have them in the building, have them learning just in case. And especially some of these guys who are younger, like Eli Ricks is young, and to be able to keep some of these guys I think would be a very valuable piece to the defense and a valuable piece to the team. A player that I'm going to talk about being a breakout, again, talking about a player who didn't play very much last year, but is expected to be a big contributor, is Nakobe Dean. I love the drafting of Nakobe Dean when it happened. I thought he was perfect for what they want to do on the defensive side of the ball. Now they lose Kaiser White, they lose TJ Edwards. They do sign Nicholas Morrow, and then Nakobe Dean has to step in there as well. He did play sparingly in a couple games, had his name called in a couple games too. But I think just where he's come from, playing at Georgia, being the leader of that defense, he has the tools and he has the leadership aspect and qualities that you need in a player in the middle of that defense. And I think he's a player that, I'm not saying he's going to be an all-pro or a Pro Bowler his second year, but he's going to make an impact. He's going to be able to give you what a Kaiser White or a TJ Edwards gave you last year, especially a Kaiser White. I think he's going to be able to play up to that level and be able to give you something, and why you were able to draft him high enough. I know they didn't draft him in the first 2 rounds, but the 3rd round, still a high quality draft pick to be used on a player. And you hope that the player is able to show out and play and give you quality reps. And I think Nakobe Dean is just a player that, watching him at Georgia and what he did, and even watching him last year in the preseason and watching him in sparingly when he came in last year, whether they had a big lead, he came in there, or they had a quick little injury. I know Kaiser White left the game here and there, but they didn't play all that much. But I just think he's a player that, your eyes are always gripped to him when he's on the field because he makes plays. And he did that in college, and he did that a little bit in the preseason. And he had the game against Tennessee. He made a couple nice plays. So I'm really excited to see what he has in store and, what he shows the fan base and the team and what he brings to that defense.
Yeah, I'll bounce off what you just said. I really think the Eagles might have something in Christian Ellis.
I like
the Eagles
Ellis.
brought him up from the practice squad last year to play special teams because special teams was dreadful last year. Christian Ellis immediately made his presence felt. He made huge play after huge play. And all during minicamp, he was making plays. It's a small sample size, but the Eagles' linebacker room is very thin. And honest to God, besides Nakobe, there's nobody else that's a lock to make it. So, you can pretty much, if you have a really strong training camp / mini camp, you're going to be earning a spot and you're going to be earning some playing time because Anthony Morrow, he's guaranteed no money. There's no money that's committed to the linebacker room. So I really like Christian Ellis. I like how he's been showing out. He's very athletic. He's kind of what the defense needs in the middle of the field. I think he can be a big contributor. And just in regards to the average fan probably doesn't know who he is. I don't know what their plan is at linebacker because I think probably the 2 positions that have the biggest questions are safety and linebacker. Mm-hmm. And, if Nakobe Dean goes down, what do you do? Who is your answer? Who's your insurance policy? They don't have one right now. So I don't know what their plan is, if there's a trade candidate or someone off the street. Personally, I would like to see Quan Alexander, but we'll see how that unfolds. I also want to give one small candidate, literally. I'm very high on Britton Covey. Mm-hmm. Hear me out. I don't think he got fair, game last year. Everyone thought that he was either bad or just, didn't do a good enough job because he was getting slammed to the ground every time. Britton Covey was very sustainable last year. And for being, he was undrafted, right?
Yeah, to Utah.
Yeah, undrafted, another undrafted. You don't make a professional 53-man roster by coincidence. You have to be able to bring something more than just, punt returning. If there's a scenario where Quez Watkins gets dealt or cut or whatever you want to say, I would foresee Britton Covey's role as a receiver becoming to fruition. He's a very, very good, solid route runner, very great hands. Speed obviously isn't there, but I really do think he has potential to produce as a weapon in the offense. I'm not saying he's going to have 700 some yards. He's going to be your just reliable guy in the flat. But that's what this offense needs. It's reliability. And I would love to see Britton Covey get involved in the pass game, because if you just watch his tape at Utah, you see that there's flashes. So again, you're not making the roster just because you're a punt returner. You have to have the ability to do multiple things, and I think we're going to get a little bit more Covey this year. And I think people got to start realizing that he's very, very valuable in many different ways.
Yeah, and last player that I'm going to bring up is somebody who's a lot bigger than Britton Covey. Now, a couple of years back, I was always high on Jordan Mailata. I kept with it just because I like the size, I like the athleticism, I like what he brought, and I thought he could put it all together and be a serviceable player, be a good player for you. And he exceeded my expectations. I didn't think he was going to be as good as he is, and he's still learning, and he still has improvements to make, and he knows that. And the player that I'm going to bring up here is a player who's been injured last couple of seasons. He played really well in training camp and mini camps last year. Then he got hurt. And then in 2019 he got hurt at the end of the year. Tyree Jackson. And the big reason that, again, he cannot even make the team, but I want to throw it out there because 6'7" tight end, able to make some catches, do some crazy stuff with the athleticism, a former quarterback at the University of Buffalo. So he is an athletic dude. It's just being able to stay on the field and be available. But I think he's a player that if he has a really good camp, training camp, mini camp, he could outplay a player like Grant Calcaterra or Dan Arnold, a veteran, because Jack Stoll is he's in there as tight end 2-3 blocking tight end because he does so much for them in that role and the way this offense is designed. So a player like Tyree Jackson, he's big enough to be able to help you block too. But if he can be that, big not wide receiver, but big tight end threat over the middle in the red zone, different stuff like that. But if he has a really good year, he could potentially be a player that breaks out and makes the roster spot.
Yeah, I mean, I was really high on Tyree Jackson when, he first got to the scene, but I kind of feel as if he is what he is now. I mean, again, injuries have affected him, but when he played in 21, right? That's when he probably saw the field the most, right? Was 21?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, it was 21. No, my bad.
Yeah, I mean, he got playing time, but that's the thing. He didn't really give much to the offense, and that was where an offense was already limited, with weapons. But who knows? I mean, he's huge. He's 6 foot, whatever. Athletic freak. He had some huge plays in training camp last year. So, I mean, we'll see. But the tight end room is very interesting because the only locks are Goddard and Stoll. Grant Calcaterra, he could be on his way out just because he isn't that great of a receiver, but he also provides nothing as a blocker. Dan Arnold, again, guaranteed little to no money, if any money. I don't know if he'll make the roster. So there's definitely a window for Tyree, that's for sure. You want me to give one more breakout, or
you can give one more breakout, and then we'll get into the next last segment of the show. But go ahead.
Okay. This guy I was really high on last year. I wasn't expecting his role to be as small as it was, and that's Kenny Gainwell. I feel as if he had a really, really strong second half / playoffs last year, and he showed a lot of what he can be. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, he has Swift in front of him. You have Penny in front of him. It's going to be tough to break out, but I think he's going to be their like third down, just reliable guy. And I think reliability will earn you respect and will earn you some recognition. Let's say Penny. I mean, what are the odds Penny is going to be healthy all year? We don't
Swift
know.
and Penny both have, injuries that
Exactly.
they've dealt with over their NFL careers.
And Kenny, I mean, Kenny ran so hard against the Giants. He ran, really well against the Niners too. Kind of a no-show in the Super Bowl, but I think he has such good tangibles as a receiver, as runner. I personally didn't even think they needed to bring in Swift just because I was that big on Kenny, but I think Kenny has a potential to have a big year if someone like Penny or Swift gets hurt.
Yeah, no, I think he could definitely carve out an even bigger role this season, especially if the guys in front of him happen to go down or not available or underperform. So definitely an opportunity for him to be able to keep showing what he showed in the end of the year and the postseason. So what I want to bring up last segment to kind of wrap it all up is kind of talk about all-time Eagles. So the Eagles have a handful of guys on the roster right now who've been with the team for over a decade or more. And those guys are Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, and Brandon Graham. My question is, when you look at all-time Eagles, it becomes a lot harder when you're looking, especially towards the top. I'm not even going to talk about towards the bottom. Like if you go like a top 100 list, which keep an eye out, you may start seeing that float up soon. But that's tough enough trying to, cut guys off. But when you're looking at towards the top, it gets even harder when you look at the guys that are on the roster now and even guys that have recently either just left the Eagles or retired or no longer playing in the NFL. And when you look at like a top 10, it's gets really tough on where you're placing some of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I feel as if, for me personally, I'm only 23, so I'm like very biased to like my era. Like I think a guy like McCoy. I mean, even Deshaun Jackson. Like I grew up watching him, and like when I think about Deshaun and his game, like realistically, like name me a player that like can like replicate his game. You know what I mean? Or that has shown that what Deshaun can do. There's not many, or if at all. But more recently, I mean, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, they have to be up there. Uh, Defensive side, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Brandon Graham, I will even admit this. I don't give Brandon Graham the even his his clutch play in the Super Bowl. I don't give him enough credit for what he's done for his organization, off the field, on the field, as a leader. I mean, Brandon Graham has been one of the best Eagles of all time, and I feel as if I'm like kind of biased to his early in his career because that's when I started to watch football. So I feel like I at that time was thinking, oh, he's a bust, blah blah blah. Nah, he's going on what, year 14, year 15. He wants to play 15 years, and he's going to play 15 years because if you're having 11 sacks in your 13th year, you got some. You get after 10 year Achilles, you got some things left in the tank. So, but my all time is B-Doc. I think he's responsible for getting me into football. I fell in love with football because of Deshaun, but B-Doc set the tone. His leadership, his aggression, his just physical play style was so unique. I mean, you don't see safeties out here hitting like he did anymore. So I think B-Doc, McCoy, Jackson, BG, and tell you what, Hurts is going to be up there sometime soon.
See, and you bring up a good point because I did want to bring this up. When you look at a player like Jalen Hurts, I would say he's a top 100 Eagle of all time, even having the type of season he had and what he did. And he's been there for a couple of seasons. He's got to be on the list of what. And yeah, you are kind of projecting a little bit too.
Easily.
But when you look at a player like Hassan Reddick or AJ Brown, do they make the list? I know they've only been on the team for 1 year, but AJ did break a record. He broke Mike Quick's receiving record. along the lines of that. See, that's where it becomes tough now, because you're looking at these guys and you want to project that they're going to have 3, 4, 5 years, more with the Eagles and put up
Right.
even more numbers. But if you're going top 100 right now, do those guys make the list? Or do you put guys like a Fred Barnett, like a Calvin Williams, like guys who, again, we're talking
Establish
Eagles
themselves.
history.
Right.
Do you put, because you can say Hassan Reddick had a great season, 16 sacks and everything that he did, even in the postseason too. Do you put him in the conversation? Because if you look at it, somebody then can counter that and say Jason Babin had 19.
I was just going to bring that up. Right.
So,
but that's the thing. Like, there's a projection, there's a future with Hassan. So I feel as if it would be fair to do that. Jason Babin, he was on a 1-year deal. So that's kind of hard. But I know what you're saying. But
what about a
it is
Bradbury? See, I think a Bradbury's tough because
Bradbury, you think he is top 100?
Because you have to look at it this way. Yes, he had a really good first season, but you can't discount guys like Sheldon Brown, Lito Shepherd, Bobby Taylor, Troy Vincent. You look at all these guys, and I'll even throw out another name. His Eagles career wasn't super long, but what about Al Harris? He's another guy that played with those guys, played a lot as the third corner, but yeah, he made his name when he went to Green Bay. But again, and it's fun to think about that, especially when there isn't much going on and you're looking at these other guys and who could make these. And you look at a player, Mike, and I've said him before with talking in terms of AJ Brown, Mike Quick. Mike Quick was an all-time type of receiver that injuries derailed.
He was
career.
Insane. Yeah.
His second, third, fourth, fifth, so his second to 6 seasons, so 83 to 87. Now, he was a 2-time All-Pro. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler. He had a Pro Bowl in every one of those years. So the 5 years in the middle of his career before injuries totally took it over and he was basically wasn't able to perform anymore. He had, of course, 3 1,000-yard seasons, 1 900-something yard season, but he had 13 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns. He in his last season in 1987 only played, not his last season of these, what I'm bringing up, played 12 games and he had 11 touchdowns. He was just so good. And it kind of stinks to think about this, is that the injuries for him derailed it, because when he got really injured, he was still only 29 years old. And
Right.
he played the next couple of seasons, but only played very small amount of games. But you think about it, imagine a prime Mike Quick with Randall Cunningham, a guy like Chris Carter. If he didn't get into what everything that happened, that he wound up getting released and then signed with Minnesota, having him, you have Keith Jackson and Keith Byers, and you have all these players, and then that led to them, those two guys, one getting hurt, the other leaving. It led to them having to draft 2 receivers early, 3 receivers early in 1990. And you think about that again, that gets into a whole nother subject of what ifs as well. But
Right.
This is a fun type of concept to kind of look, because this team has had such a long history, and you look at guys who played years and years ago, like the Steve Van Buren,
Exactly.
and
That's
the
the
Chuck
point.
Bednareks, and the Norm Van Brocklands, and Tommy
Right.
McDonald. You have these guys who are Hall of Famers and who played a lot of years. A guy like who just recently passed away, Bob Brown, was an all-time offensive lineman that asked to be traded from the Eagles in the 60s, but he was an all-pro, Pro Bowl type of offensive lineman that was so good. And the Eagles have been littered with so many really talented players. And it's tough when you look at a list like that, because you're going to have guys who are, ranked low, who are very good players, but it's just, that's how many really good players that this franchise has had over the years.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. And this is how I've always felt when you're comparing today's players to, former players, back in the day,
Mhm.
because this is a fact. The players are getting physically more athletic. They're getting better, and it's facts. Like,
Mhm.
you know, when you compare, let's say, Brown or Smith compared to Mike Quick, like respectfully, like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are physically on completely different levels. Now, back then, Mike Quick was arguably he could have been or
But
was, at his when healthy at his best, he was the best receiver in the league.
you
But
have to also take in fact the way defenses played back then when Quick played, they could do a lot more to the receivers than they're allowed to do now.
good
So
point. Good
what would
point.
Quick's numbers have been?
But
And
I also think it also can go hand in hand. I think receivers also probably could have gotten away with a lot more too because of push offs. I mean, I guarantee you, push offs probably weren't called as often as it is now. So, someone guy like Devontae Smith, who is so fluent in his route running, or can create so much separation, that's to me way more impressive or holds more weight because he's already going against today's modern cornerbacks who are already physically gifted and are taught the finest mechanics and whatnot, and he's able to just expose them. You know what I mean?
yeah, and then the other thing is you can't leave guys like Chuck Bednarik was one of the last 60 minutes. He played both. He played center and linebacker. And one of the
That's a completely different discussion,
toughest
but yeah,
guys
for
you'll
sure.
ever. And I had a pleasure to meet him when I was younger. He was the nicest guy. His fingers all mangled just because that's just what they did back then. But also
Right.
when you look at different eras, you also have to look in it's not with the Eagles, it's even with other teams. You can't say now you can look at numbers and say it, but you can't say, well, Terry Bradshaw is not a top 10 Steeler because of the era he played. Big Ben's better. You can say maybe talent-wise, but when you look at wins, Terry never lost a Super Bowl. And you have certain
Yeah.
things like that. And you look at the Eagles aspect of it. A player like Nick Foles, he's a top 100 Eagle, easy, because he brought the team their only Super Bowl. He was a main focal point of that Super Bowl championship. And you look at what he did in that game when the defense made only one play to help them, but he was step for step with Tom Brady, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So I think he deserves a spot. But it's funny because you get to the point where you look at the quarterbacks and Nick Foles, what he did. But what about a guy like Carson Wentz? Is he a top 100 Eagle?
He's not.
And
Absolutely not.
the way everything ended and the way he had one good season. Now, again, somebody can counter that and say, okay, well, how was Jalen a top 100 Eagle? Because he only had one. Now he's had only one good season.
Right.
But again, recency
But
bias.
you have substance when it comes to like Wentz. Like what he was.
Yeah.
And we're projecting for what Jalen's supposed to be or what he's going to be. We already know what Carson is. He is what he is. He's very gifted quarterback who has really good traits, but mentally he just can't put it together. But if he also wasn't injury prone or didn't get injured, would that have improved his ability to be a top quarterback? Absolutely. But I think I saw the video of Carson Wentz against Dallas, that fumble. He got smashed in the ground.
I don't want to think about that.
It's crazy because he sat in that pocket forever. And I don't understand how I don't know why I talk about Carson Wentz, but I can't believe, and watching him grow to be what he is now, how delusional I was because this man sat in the pocket.
I made so many excuses and tried to pull up all these different numbers to try to make it look better than it was.
Last year when Jalen Hurts missed Quez Watkins over the middle of the field, I was harder on Jalen than I was ever on Carson. It just makes me very disappointed as a fan of myself because it's I was just so delusional just because he was that number 2 overall pick. I didn't want to give that up.
Yeah, unfortunately. But it even brings the point is Mike Vick a top 100 Eagle? He was 20-20 in his career with the Eagles. It's just he had one really good season. 2010 was hell of a season for him, but the injuries and everything. It's just, again, that's where you come to the point where you run out of spots. Top 150 Eagle? Well, yeah, probably. But again, top 100, it's tough because when you look at guys, and you have to put a set a certain type of criteria too. Guys who had longevity deserve to be on the list. Guys who played over 100 games with them, deserve to be on that list if you really think about it. Guys like Todd Herremans and Jamal Jackson, and those guys played so many years and started so many games. It's a tough list to put together. It's fun to think in certain players, but it is tough because you're going to leave guys off that people are going to say, "Hey, why wasn't he on the list? Why is he on the list?" Like,
right.
What about?
I'll end with this.
Go ahead.
I'll end with this. Let's go through the roster. I just quickly went through the roster. I feel confident that a minimum of 14 of these names could be in the Eagles top 100. I think that just speaks to how good.
I'll go yes or no if they are in my top 100.
I'm not saying that currently, but I'm speaking in regards of have the potential to finish.
Okay.
Like when their career is said and done, have the potential to be in the Eagles top 100. Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
AJ Brown.
Yep.
Devontae Smith.
Yes.
Dallas Goedert.
Yep.
Landon Dickerson.
I think so. He's got to put together a career. It can't be.
Name me at their ceiling a better guard than what he's could potentially be. Assuming he's going to get extended next year.
You mean that the Eagles have had?
Recently, yeah.
Well,
they got their prime. Evan Mathis was awesome, but he was only there for so long. You know what I mean?
Brandon Brooks.
I'm kind of disappointed myself for forgetting him.
Evan Mathis, you're right. Sean Andrews was a hell of a guard.
But I'd also put Brooks in the top 100 too. So,
yeah, no. Brooks is in there, and so is Evan Mathis. Todd Herremans was a very good player. He has the potential for sure. Again, this is looking at the future. He's got to have at least another 5 seasons and maybe another Pro Bowler or 2, and then he's absolutely on the list.
Borderline Jordan Molina. If he has to reach his ceiling, if he can take a step this year, I think there's a potential behind that. Jason Kelsey, obviously. Lane Johnson, obviously. Brandon Graham, obviously. Jordan Davis, if he reaches the potential, yes.
Potential. Fletcher Cox, yeah.
Fletch, yes. Sweat, if he can. Sweat has only gotten better every single year, so I feel like he's going to force himself in that conversation.
Got a couple more years that he's got to show up because there are some really good defensive ends that this franchise had. But I could see that potential.
Hassan Reddick.
Yes.
And I guess last one, probably Slay.
Yeah.
And then you have guys like Jake Elliott, who's a freaking kicker, or
there is
Nolan
a kicker
Smith
on the list.
Jalen Carter.
There is a kicker on the list.
David Akers. And I honestly, God, I would probably put Jake in the top 100 already because he doesn't get enough recognition.
Again, it's the top 100 is tough because there's and I don't want to have a bunch of guys on the last couple years teams to the recency bias. You don't want to have too many guys that were just there because there's been guys through the history that have done more and have already established themselves. But it's tough because there's a lot of guys, special teams players. You have certain special teams players. Darren Sproles.
Darren's in there.
So you look at a guy I would love to put on, but I don't think he makes top 100. He makes top 150, but not top 100. Would be like Ike Reese.
Yeah,
a Pro Bowler, a big special team player. But again, there's so many good players that it's tough. It's really tough. What about how about this? Last name I'll end with, and then we can wrap up. What about T.O.? Played a year and a half with him. Because he's on the list.
I feel as if no, because I feel like at their best, I mean, Tio was phenomenal that year. I mean,
He had
it's
20
tough
touchdowns, and I think he had,
because now we're comparing with like AJ Brown now. You know what I mean? Because
AJ Brown is on the list, by the way.
no, yeah, he is going to be on a list, but it's like, um,
But
let's say
Tio
that
played
he
21
wasn't.
games with the Eagles. He had 124 receptions, 1,963 yards, so 93.5 yards per game.
I feel as if you
20
have
touchdowns.
anything less than like a year or anything less than 2 years, it's tough to justify why you should be in the top 100 because like every single guy that I named right now off this roster, aside from maybe Jalen Hurts and Smitty, like everyone else has cemented their name because of what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
If or like a guy like Ike Reese, or how you brought up Bradbury earlier. Bradbury was here for a year, but he's probably going to be left off just because I mean, he's going to be playing
So
the rest of his contract out of his prime probably.
the tough part with it was Tio's first year, 77 catches, 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns, all pro bowler. Second year, played 7 games, had 47 catches, 763 yards, and 6 touchdowns, which if you just take what he played the year before, if he plays another half of those games and you just add those totals, it's basically 1,500 receiving yards. He's got 94 catches and 12 touchdowns. I know he didn't play, but he averaged 109 yards per game in a season where all that turmoil, all those issues, him and Donovan not getting along. Now, again, he may not even have reached that because Donovan gets hurt and then they go to the drebs of Mike McMahon and all that fiasco.
But I feel as if that's unfair to a player who was I can't think of a specific player right now, but I feel like that's unfair to a player who's had a long tenure and consistently performed. I mean, like let's say James Bradbury, let's say he has a third of what he did last year and continues the rest of his career with the Eagles. I'm putting him over Tio any day. No matter how phenomenal he was, in that 1 year and a half. Like if James Bradbury plays half the way he did last year, this year, I have to put James over him because of just the consistency. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. I just think, and that's where the AJ Brown aspect comes in too. When you break a team record that has stood for over 30 years, actually I think it was 40 years, 38 or 39 or 40 years, and you break that record in your first season, you deserve to be on an all-time list just because of what you did for that team. And like, I know Tio didn't play one season. He played a season and a half and still 93.5 yards per game, had hell of a number. And you saw what he did then when he went to Dallas and the type of seasons he had there that you think could have had here. I think it's a good conversation because there's a lot of different things you can talk about with certain players and the qualifications and everything that you see. It's a fun list to come up with because it brings up a lot of conversation. Same thing with what ifs. What if this happened? What if this never happened? All that. It gives fun conversation, and that's a big reason wanted to bring it up tonight because there isn't much going on. Training camp still is about a month away, so definitely wanted to bring something a little enjoyable, a little fun conversation up. But
I have 2 questions before we end.
Go ahead.
And this is something to think about moving forward. Will either Quez Watkins or Derek Barnett be cut or traded?
I think the better likelihood is Quez Watkins because of the contract situation. So the way Barnett's deal is done,
We gotta touch on Sirianni's comments on Quez because that I don't know how to feel about it because last time he did that was with Rager, and as soon as he said that, you were like, this is just straight pumping his name up. They're trying to get him out. And the fact that he did it again in a similar time of the year with a similar position, I feel as if they're trying to pump him up because you already. I was the biggest Quez fan. I wanted him to see the field the rookie year. I was begging Doug to put him in and whatnot. I feel as if he is what he is, and I would be absolutely shocked if the Eagles if Howie would fall for this trap again. You know what I mean? So I think, but the thing is, you trade away Quez, you cut Quez, then what? You're gonna rely on Britton Covey? I'm with it, but you're gonna need an insurance policy. You know what I mean? Because he didn't have any role in offense last year.
Is it a hope maybe that one of these younger guys steps up and is able to be a number 4 guy, you know, be able to show you something? Devin Allen, you know, Joseph Nada, these, you know, Hasselwood, you know, these guys that you sign that, you know, maybe see what they have. I don't know. I think Quez is more likely just because of the cap ramifications and the way the team loves defensive linemen and be able to rotate. Derek Barnett, I don't really know if he's healthy enough. He's a very good against the run, and you can be able to, you know, maneuver him in. You know, if you do trade him, you know, if you release him, you basically eat money. But if you trade him, I think they do save about 1.1 million, which really doesn't account to much because the player that would be coming up on the top 52 with the cap, basically you get maybe a couple $100,000 in relief, but maybe you get a late round pick that you can have for next year or the year after. But I think Quez is the better option to potentially be shipped off, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm just very bothered of how they signed Zacchaeus, which I think is a fine player, but I'm really bothered how they didn't sign like a possession guy. I really thought Marvin Jones was a perfect guy, like this offense. Reliability. So he's been doing it. He can give you what you need rather than Quez, which has a high ceiling, but what's his floor? His floor is much lower than what Marvin Jones said or example would be.
What about a guy? Say they do get rid of Quez and say Zacchaeus is okay, but isn't the greatest. What do you think about a guy like Jarvis Landry? I know he's out there. He's not going to cost you a lot.
Yeah.
He didn't do very much. He didn't do a whole heck of a lot last year with New Orleans, and with Cleveland in 2021 didn't have the greatest season. But again, he's a slot possession type of receiver. He's not a burner. He's not going to beat you deep. He's just going to Mr. Reliable over the middle.
Yeah, I don't know all the names that are available, but I've seen like Julio Jones or Jarvis get in the mix, and truthfully, I think that is exactly what this offense could use. Jarvis catches every single thing that comes his way. I forget who said this. I listened to some podcasts. I think it was Eagle Eye, and I think Dave was like saying how basically if you're available now, there's a reason why you're not signed. And
some of the times it's money. Some of the times it's a player who's waiting for an opportunity to get more money if someone gets hurt. You know, there's that. There's age. There's injury. A lot of different reasons.
But when you're a household name like Jarvis Landry or Julio Jones, obviously your age, but it's like I worry why you're available. But I think Jarvis would be a sick option for this offense just because his hands are incredible. Julio, who knows?
DeAndre's not happening. We'll just squash that. He wants to go to a team where he can be a number 1 or maybe a number 2, but still get paid. But
I'm not convinced that they're done at receiver. I'm fully at receiver, linebacker.
Kenny Golladay?
It's grotesque.
There really isn't much. You named a couple of guys that are on the list here. Byron Pringle, N'Keal Harry, Quintus Cephas. What's Cephas? I think he has the gambling issue. Maybe he does. I don't remember. T.Y. Hilton still out there.
I was thinking of him yesterday.
Sammy Watkins, and then really nothing else. Preston Williams, Marcus Johnson, Rashard Higgins. There isn't really much there.
Can you quickly pull up who's like free agents next year? Maybe how he pulls none of his like
let's see,
rental guy type deal again. I that might be my tweet tomorrow. I might put out a tweet about how the receiver position is in question because I don't know how after you saw what happened in the Super Bowl think about it. Think about every single loss the Eagles had this year. Quez Watkins against the Commanders.
Yeah,
good.
2024. Some guys, Van Jefferson. I'm just gonna name some of the some good names. Traquan Smith from New Orleans has a void year. Mecole Hardman has a void year, so he could potentially be gone. Sterling Shepard, but he's been injury prone beyond belief. Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, of course. Some of these guys can get re-signed. T. Higgins,
he's staying put,
and Tyler Boyd,
staying put.
Gabe Davis,
probably
Trent
staying
Sherfield, KJ Hamler.
He could be on the move, but he's not a possession guy.
No,
that's the thing. This is my biggest problem with Quez. And again, this man has all the potential in the world. He has some athletic freak of nature traits, but last year versus Commanders, he's responsible for that loss. Facts. I can't remember it, but Super Bowl. I mean, again, that's a very specific play, and that's not the only reason why they lost. You can blame it on Jalen, you can blame it on defense, but in the biggest moments, he was not there for you. And I just do not know how you go into this year thinking or being convinced that he can do otherwise.
Yeah, he was given a lot of opportunities. He had a lot of mishaps,
and it's not like that was his second year or first year. That was his third year, and again, AJ is there now. Smitty's there. Goddard's there. He's obviously not going to see the targets, but when the ball does come your way, you have to make the play. And if you keep the reliability,
if there is an injury to one of your top two receivers, and these guys, if you don't have a veteran possession guy or a veteran that you can be old Mr. Reliable, it's going to be difficult. But hey, it's a lot of stuff to look forward to. It's the end of June. We still have July, August. A lot of stuff going on. The roster's never set. We know that. Howie said that as well. But it's going to be fun. And next week we are going to have Hollis Thomas on. He's going to join us, talk a little bit about the Birds. Always love having him on. Friend of the show. Awesome guy. He also will be at all the away games for the Philly Sports Trips. He is their ambassador. So if you want to see Hollis, say hi to him, talk to him, whatever you would like, definitely sign up for one of the trips. All About the Birds is sponsoring 2 trips, one to see the Jets on October 15th, one to see the Washington Commanders on October 29th. So if you want to go on any of those trips or any other trips, phillysportstrips.com, make sure you go on there. If you do want to do the 2 trips that I mentioned, make sure when you go to check out, in the notes to the organizer, this is key, notes to the organizer, you want to put in Allentown pickup. But should be some fun stuff. Definitely can't wait to have Hollis on to talk. We will be at 7:30 next Wednesday, so make sure those notifications are set so you do get the notification when we do go live. We will be doing a lot more 7:30 shows. Try to start a little bit earlier. It makes the night not as long because we're ending here after 10 o'clock. So, but with that, thank you, Kendall.
Thank you.
We're always here and we're always giving great content. We want to thank everybody that follows us, everyone that comments, everyone that watches. We appreciate it tremendously. And with that, going to give a very happy and joyful Go Birds.
Go Birds.
This is Matt Ware. Hey, for all the Eagle content you need, go follow All About the Birds. They do a damn thing. Check them out.
Hey, Eagles fans, I may be in Tampa, but I know where to find the best Eagles content out there. Check out my friends at All About the Birds.
Philadelphia, what's up? This your boy Freddie Mitchell, a.k.a. Fred X. It's all about the bird.
All birds all the time. All birds all the time.
All About the Birds provides you with weekly analysis, game recaps, informative interviews, and it's all birds all the time.